what does the digital revolution, how is that changing things? And it appeared to me that there were two things that were happening for a realist that should concern a realist that we have not even considered. The first was more actors. Like the fact that we have an information age means that there are many more power centers in the world, because what it does is it allows like groups like ISIS or, you know, the flow, international flow of capital, this you'll see capital and information allows smaller actors to punch above their weight, you know, like so that you get lots of actors like Twitter. Think about how Twitter has influenced and American politics. If you believe in Twittergate, think of like social media, how much this has changed our politics. It's huge. Like that's the other second part of the book, the sort of
and our borders have changed as well. It's no longer country borders. If it's an ideology, it's people with the information age, people across all countries and borders share same thinking. So it's different kind of construct.
Much easier to form transnational identities, or things like that. I mean, just think like how easy it is to create your own personal world these days. Like you can believe whatever you want. Any fact you want, you can find on the internet. You can find people to back up your facts, your world. So it's, you know, like if you're looking for somebody, in the old days, if you're looking for someone that believed the world was flat, you'd have to knock on doors. You wouldn't have good luck. But if you put it up on the internet now, you'll find, you know, you have a whole crowd out there.
Just tweet it. Just go and tweet it.
Right. So anyway, the first structural point was there are many, many more actors that had significance that could, I say, they couldn't really exert power in terms of like a positive way. They couldn't construct anything, but they could destroy things. You think about the Arab Spring, like you have phones, cell phones, so you could get, you know, they called it crowd power or square power, like people power. You could get people to tear down a government. Okay, that's great. But you can't get, what after you've torn down the government? Who's going to build it? That's much more difficult. So I was saying like negative power, really, because the power to like destroy things, to block, to disarm, to do that increase. So you had a lot of actors that can do that. So lots of power centers. So it's like hurting. So like when you think of the world and order is usually imposed by a hegemon, one great power. But now a hegemon, it's like Gulliver tied down by Lilliputians, because you can't do anything. You have all these actors that are thwarting your designs, you know? So in that sense, it's like herding cats, you know, a few cats maybe, but when you have dozens of them, it's impossible. So being an orderer in this world with multiple power centers is very difficult. The second thing, that's sort of the structural view of the international system. But the system is also composed of a process. Like you think of systems as having a structure, like who are the important actors, and then a process part, which is how are these actors interconnected? How tightly, like we might call it dynamic density or Durkheimian density. So how tightly coupled are the actors? And you see today, because of the internet and the information age, tightly coupled actors. So that like anything that happens in one part of the system reverberates all through the system. So like think of the pandemic, right? I mean, the original thought, well, I didn't think, but the government was telling us that somebody ate a bat in, you know, Wuhan, right? And then look at how much damage that did. I'm like, my gosh, you know, I wish they hadn't eaten that bat, you know? Now, if that were true, right? You see, it's just that tightly coupled system means that, you know, outcomes are so difficult to predict. There's so much randomness. The system is so tightly coupled, it becomes like what we call an enormously complex, tightly coupled systems. In those systems, there was a book by someone you might know, Perot. Called Normal Accidents. You know, I was like, when you have tightly coupled systems, accidents are going to happen. It's just because there's no way to predict how they're going to react. You know, there's so many nodes and interconnection. Nobody knows. You know, It was like the first financial crisis. Nobody understood it. Nobody knew how to stop, prevent it. Nobody knew what those things were, those whatever they were called, derivatives. I don't know. So this is like, so when you have a tightly coupled system that's very interconnected. I don't want to say interdependent because we can get into that later. Because interdependence means something different. It means mutual dependence, but I just mean interconnected. And you have multiple power centers, then that is a recipe for disorder. That's a recipe for like nobody can control anything. It's like out of our hands. The system, it's like on autopilot. So that's what I was trying to say is that international, so people might say, well, yeah, but the US was a unipole at the time. It was a unipolar world, and the US was true. The US is the most powerful in terms of relative capabilities. The US remains, and was even more before China's rise, the most dominant power on the face of the earth. Nobody ever thought you could have so much concentrated capabilities in the hands of one state. And yet it doesn't matter. Capabilities do not translate into influence or power as influence, because power is the ability to get others to do things they otherwise wouldn't do. So it's influence, right? And if you're the only superpower in the world, sure, you can do whatever you want, right? But so can everyone else. Like, the reason so much power during the Cold War is because our allies needed us for security. So we're all pulling, and we could use that to get them to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. We'd say, well, we're providing your security. We're doing this for, when you don't have that anymore, it's like, sure, we can do whatever we want, any foolish thing we want, like try to democratize the Middle East. All right, good luck with that. Like we did a lot of stupid things that we wouldn't have been able to do if we were constrained by another superpower like the Soviet Union. But we couldn't get anyone to follow us. It's like being a leader marching down the street, like you're leading and you look behind, there's no followers, that's kind of the problem. It's like the paradox of power.